not here to tell anybody how they should feel about something. Like, I try to have it more of a, here was my experience, take it for what it's worth.
Everybody, it's Brandon, the Weekend Cruiser, where I go on a weekend cruise just about every weekend, and I am thrilled to have a personal fan favorite of mine sitting directly beside of me today, Mr. Matt Hochberg with the Royal Caribbean blog. Hey there, Matt.
Brandon, good to have you here. Thanks for having me here, I should say.
A pleasure, a pleasure. Now, I have been a fan of yours for years.
Thank you.
You know, watching your content, getting to know the Royal Caribbean and cruise lines. And when I started out, you were my go-to spot for amazing content.
Good.
And I wanted to just have a conversation, casual conversation with you, with everybody that's out there, to get to know you some. So we'll talk through that, but also learn more about Royal Caribbean blog. We've seen it, we see your articles, but I want to know how the secret sauce is made a little bit. I want to get into, you know, how did you make it there? Let's get to know you a little bit. So, where is home?
I live in Orlando, Florida. Live in the Orlando area and been living there for about 7 years or so now.
Now, are you like me? Did you move to Orlando to be close to ships? Or did it just already there?
Yes and no. So when I moved down here, I still had a day job. It was more of a like, oh, that's also a nice reason to do so.
Very Floridian thing to do.
Yes, yeah. We were just, honestly, I think for like a lot of people, we just thought the cost of living in Florida was great. The weather was great.
Yeah.
So that drew us down here more than the ships. But as it turned out, that was a really good idea.
But you have a very recognizable face and have a strong following. And how do you deal with that? Like, that, you know, people come up, what's your response?
I'm always really happy about it. I always tell people, I want you to say hello, because I always will hear back, I'll go home after a cruise and be like, oh, Matt, I saw you on the ship, but I didn't want to bother you. And it's like, well, unless I'm yelling at my kids, which has happened a couple times where someone like that, like, that's a little awkward. But as long as I'm not doing that, I'm on vacation. I mean, I'm working, but I'm on vacation. Like, it really doesn't, I enjoy meeting people, and that's the fun part of cruising, right?
Yeah.
Even before you ever did your channel, I did my channel, I thought it was really cool you got to meet people on a cruise ship and get to know people, and it was just, I would never do this on land. Why would I want to start talking to you? But on a cruise ship, it's kind of neat because we have something in common already, and you get to meet people from all over. So I love it. I love hearing from people like what they love, what they don't like, what kind of clicked for them, and some things that really jumped out. You know, it's always interesting.
How about on land? Do people recognize you at the grocery store?
That's happened at the grocery store. One Halloween, somebody rang the doorbell, trick or treat, love the blog, thanks. And that was the guy. And that was a little weird, but to that person, thank you still. I enjoyed it. I mean, that's the community aspect of it is what really makes it fun and interesting. Whether it's a live video on here on YouTube, whether it's talking with people on Facebook, on our message boards, like, I just like making that kind of a connection. And because we have something in common, that's the best part.
I wanted to tell people a little bit of the story of when we met. So I don't even know if you remember this or not, but it was Oasis of the Seas right after COVID. So when it had started back up, I was there for a couple of cruises doing back-to-backs. And somehow or another, you had found out that I was going to be on the ship, or I was there. I don't know if I had shot a video of the cruise before.
Yeah.
And you went to one of my good friends, Denise, and said, hey, is Brandon here? To your credit, like, I was terrified. I was like, why is the Matt Hochberg of Royal Caribbean blog asking if I'm on the ship and if, you know, you can say hello? And you wound up being an amazing person, but I was petrified.
Oh.
And I say that because I was like, did I do something wrong? Did I do a copyright violation? Like, what's going on here? Why would you want to talk to me? Well, you have been nothing but gracious, and we've hung out a few times on the ship. Can you talk to us about what cruise blogging was like for you during COVID?
It was terrible. It was a difficult transition. I had just gone full time with Royal Caribbean blog. I got a taste of the dream, and then then it was like, oh, the dream's over. So it became more like politics in a lot of ways. It was a lot of just like a horse race of what happened today. What did the CDC say? What did the cruise line say? What did this governor say? And that became more the story. I think for people like us, Brandon, it's hard to convey that struggle of like, then you're always thinking in the back of your mind, well, this is great, but what's happening? What's after this one? Right? And that's, during COVID, that was a really, really tough question.
Now, did you ever think about hanging it up during COVID?
No. The question was just how long was this going to have to go for, and how long was I going to have to keep maneuvering and calling audibles and whatnot.
Cost.
I was looking for like more like really red flags, right? Like a cruise line going out of business.
Talk to us about how many current viewers, followers. You've got blogs, you've got podcasts, you've got a lot of different platforms.
Thank you. Yeah.
How many people are taking in your content?
It's a hard question to answer because it doesn't quantify like that. Like podcasts is impossible to know the numbers, right? YouTube is really easy because you have the subscribers, but as you know, not everyone who subscribes watches the channel, which by the way, if you're watching, you're not subscribing, hit the subscribe button. I'm not really a numbers guy. Like I don't get hung up on like analytics and things like that. For me, I look at it as, am I delivering the kind of content that I would want to read? And is it the type of coverage that I want to have for what we're doing? Because there's lots of different approaches, a lot of different angles that are out there. And I feel like I do it the way that I would want to, what I would want to read, what would be interesting to me, if that makes sense.
When we look into the cruise vlog marketplace, if you will, of the different creators out there, what you all want to see is negative content. You want to hear the ahas, the I got yous. Those are the videos that really take off, that drive your views and subscriber counts. And you've never done that, Matt. We're positive and uplifting. That's kind of been, I think, the motive for Royal Caribbean Blog.
I said it before, it's the kind of videos that I want to have, or I would want to watch if it was me. So I feel like coverage that we provide, I think, is also about sharing the experience. One of the things I've always told my staff, and I still feel this way, is I'm not here to tell anybody how they should feel about something. Like, I will tell you what my experience was like, or share it, but I try not to go off on the point of saying, like, trying to force an opinion on people, or try to craft an opinion more. I try to have it more of a, here was my experience, take it for what it's worth.
Right, and I think that's a tough balance sometimes, especially online, is to say, okay, here was my experience, here's the good, here's the bad, without putting that emotion or opinion behind it.
The beauty of it also is that people do different kind of content. You know, my channel's not the same as your channel, nor is the same as a lot of other YouTubers out there. That's fine, that's great, I think. It's that we're not all doing the same thing, and we're trying to take our own approaches to that. I think that's what endears us to the audience, I think, depending on which perspective we take. And, you know, if you prefer someone else's take on it, more power to you.
So when we think of the Royal Caribbean blog, I mean, again, you've grown tremendously. How did it start?
We were going on Oasis of the Seas, and I was really excited for the cruise, like a lot of people, a lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement. And I thought, well, I really want to get that, I want to share that somehow, that excitement. And I thought I was going to do a blog about my Oasis cruise. And then I found, obviously, RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com was available, and I thought, what if I expanded that a little bit more?
What year was this?
2010.
2010, okay.
Yeah. So it was like, okay, what you see today is not part of some grand plan that I had, like Steve Jobs, like, you know, mapped this out, wrote, it just was very organic. First 2 years, like, I just wrote things, and it was just like, whatever, right? Didn't even think twice about it. I don't know if my wife knew it existed. About 2 years after, people started, like, I noticed people were commenting. I was like, wait, people are actually reading this? You know, like I thought I was just like, it was just disappearing into the ether. It's a hobby. It's something you do to try to challenge yourself to get better at it. And that's how I looked at it myself as well. And then it wasn't really until, you know, 2017, 2018, something like that, that it really started to become like, it started to take a life of its own on. And by the time I got laid off from my job in 2019, I had this idea I was going to eventually go full-time with the blog, but I wasn't ready at that time, and I got laid off, and I was like, well,
I'm ready.
Now, I mean, what's the worst that happens? I've been unemployed for another couple months and come back, you know what I mean? So I thought, let's give it a try.
Now, how have you seen the Royal Caribbean blog change over the years?
For a long time, Royal Caribbean blog was how Matt cruises, right? And that's nothing wrong with how I cruise, I don't think. But it's just my one way that I cruise. And I understand, recognize people cruise other ways, and there are different ships that are out there and different itineraries that are out there. So we've tried to grow the coverage to try to expand, because obviously we're trying to cover Royal Caribbean as a whole, and there's many aspects of that. So we've tried covering more of the different ways, different ships, different itineraries, different folks who are out there, you know, because not everyone is my demographic. So we've tried to expand that, be a little more inclusive, and being able to just encompass more of what it is to be like to go on a Royal Caribbean cruise. So if you go on a cruise and maybe you identify more with someone else is on the staff compared to myself, that's great. But you're getting something out of it. That's the important thing.
But there's a team behind Matt. So at what point did you say, I need some help? You brought some folks on. Talk to us about that transition and what they're doing.
Ironically enough, it was YouTube. I hate editing video. It was the bane of my existence. It was, I can record it, I can edit, I can plan, I can do everything. And then when I sit down to edit it, it was like, if my video was more than about 4 minutes, Brendan, I was like, oh God, why did I record all this? Like, it was just torture. So I was talking actually to a friend who is an entrepreneur. He's like, you, as an entrepreneur, you want to take the things off your plate that slow you down, that you hate doing, so that you can do other things that are going to expand your business. And I thought, wow. Because I was worried. I was like, well, I don't know if I can afford that. And he's like, you can't afford not to. And so that was my like wake-up call. So I got Jen, a lot of people know Jenna, my video editor, brought her on board. And that was like, now I'm like, I can't even imagine not doing that, right? So that's kind of that was the beginning of it. And then bringing on some writers, people to help do more of it, was really the other idea, and it was just my whole strategy is throw it against the wall, see if it sticks.
Yep.
And if it does, great, and if it doesn't, we're not doing that again.
So how much content do you try to push out on any given week?
Oh man, just Royal Caribbean Blog, because we have another site also.
Well, let's talk about the other side.
Yeah, so the other site's Cruz.blog, but we do 2 blog posts a day on RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. We do 2 original videos on YouTube. We do a live video. We do a recap video of the live. We do 2 articles a day on Cruz blog. Podcast episode on Wednesday. I think that's it. Not counting anything else.
So what is Cruz.blog? How is that different than Royal Caribbean Blog?
Cruz.blog is the whole industry, including Royal Caribbean. That was like during the pandemic. I don't remember in the very beginning. People were like, "Oh, let's learn a language during our time off, right?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Let me start another website."
I'm gonna double down on cruising.
Double down on cruising. Yeah. So it was just kind of again, throw it against the wall, see if it sticks, and now it's turned out to be a nice little secondary site that's really kind of grown a lot, actually, because as much as we love Royal Caribbean, obviously it's a big world of cruising out there. And now with other lines joining in, like Virgin, new ships, it's really breathed so much.
The industry continues to change. I mean, they keep us guessing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've seen this as well. I mean, you've been on some other lines other than Royal, and you get to. There's a big world out there, and people like seeing other things that are out there besides Royal Caribbean. So it's just nice to have that kind of coverage of what's happening there and kind of sharing and all that.
Yeah. Now you still cover celebrity a little bit too, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And that's on Royal Caribbean Blog, though.
Yeah, on both. Yep.
How has that done over the time? Have you seen the people that loved you and followed you for Royal Caribbean now following you over to celebrity content?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I think for a lot of people who cruise Royal Caribbean, I think they look at it, and I think you probably felt the same way. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you probably thought, well, I like Royal Caribbean. Celebrity's sister company.
The natural progression.
Exactly. And that's why I'm not sure when this is going out, but we're recording it. I'm going on my first celebrity cruise in about a month. I'm excited for it, but that's I think my thought process is exactly what a lot of people think as well. So obviously I would be lying if I said it was as popular because it's still celebrity versus Royal Caribbean. But at the same time, it's, I think, interesting because people like to see, well, what does the other side of the fence look like a little bit, and how does it compare, how does it contrast? So it's a fun, it's a fun way to kind of bring in some other things and try to make it a little more interesting overall.
I've talked a little bit about that. I think post-COVID, and this continues to happen as cruise lines find their footing and try to see where they're going, what their new model is, if you will. It's allowing us as the guests to say, I don't know that I like this model. Let me go see something on the other side. And you know what? I think a lot of people are going to try that, but I think a lot of people are going to come back as well. They're going to go, that wasn't what I thought. Yeah,
I think the reality is most cruise lines are more similar than they're not. There's just a few nuances that kind of distinguish lines from another. And you're going to find that they're more similar than they aren't. But I also feel like it's just going to be a nice way to kind of offer something a little bit different.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And if you're trying a new cruise line, I would advise you keep that same mentality that Matt has on open-minded because it will be different. Yeah. The cruise ship layout's going to frustrate you because you're not going to know exactly where you're going. But you can still make it. You'll still have a great time. Just know that it's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Now, if you had to do it all over again, Matt, what would you do differently growing the Royal Caribbean blog?
Oh, I would have gotten full-time about 2 years earlier than I did.
Yeah.
That was one realization I came to when I went live. I was like, or when I went full-time rather. I was like, oh man, I should have done this like at least a year or two earlier than that. I think that's probably my biggest one because otherwise, I think the only way you learn is from your mistakes, so to speak. Luckily, I've not made any terrible mistakes. It's just, some things maybe I'd say, oh, I wouldn't do that again kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That's part of the learning process. And that's the fun part of it. And everything else has just been kind of a learning opportunity more than anything.
How many cruises have you done? And I assume most of those are the Royal Caribbean these days.
I think I'm up to about 80-something cruises, somewhere in that ballpark. And it's almost all I've not been on a non-Royal ship since 2012. But I go on a cruise about once a month, even though I did a video last year, so I swore this off. I'm back.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Hi, I'm Matt. I don't have a problem, but it's
you're in good company. You're in good company. So which one of those cruises, I mean, you've done a lot of them, has been your favorite?
Alaska. The majesticness of it just is incredible. That one is always just my number one go-to that I've done actually.
Yeah, and I think that's the best word. I mean, when I went up there with my family, we called it majestics too. I mean, you just look at it and it's just absolutely beautiful nature.
Yeah.
Now, what is your favorite ship? Currently, this is being filmed on Allure of the Seas.
That's right.
But what is your favorite ship or favorite ship class?
Definitely Wonder. I love Wonder, and I'm not just usually Matt just chase the newest ship, which is not true. I was fine with it not being Symphony before that or Odyssey or anything like that. But I really liked Wonder. I thought I love the Oasis class to begin with because of all the variety of things to do, and then on top of that, you then add in all those neat little tweaks and things like that, the mason jar. I really like that ship a lot.
That they did a really good job with that ship. I am not a big ship person, though I'm here on the Allure. I'm not a big ship person.
I think I've only seen you on big ships personally. Like you and I've been on.
True.
Right.
This is true. But Wonder they did a really good job with.
Yes.
So in thinking of the upcoming fleet, you've got Icon, Utopia coming up.
Yep.
Any plans to be on Icon? Everybody wants to know if I'm going there.
Yeah.
Are you going to be there?
Yeah, I'll be on the inaugural sailing for sure. I'm not going
Fantastic.
to miss that. It's going to be it's very exciting. This is 2024 is going to be an amazing year because you've got 2 new ships joining the fleet in the same year, and that kind of happened with Odyssey and Wonder, but that was during COVID, and it was a very different vibe.
Odyssey got washed out really quick.
Yes,
in that
very
somehow
good. Yes, yeah. So this is I'm going to say unparalleled, even though there is a bit of a parallel, but you'll have to excuse what happened with Odyssey and Wonder, because I feel like this is a big year.
Yeah. And by the way, if you don't know this already and watching the channel, Utopia is doing weekend sailings out of Port Canaveral, so I will certainly be on Utopia. Not going to make it on the Icon. She's a little bit of a longer sailing for me, but I will certainly be on the weekend
Are you allowed to say you're on the inaugural?
Not the inaugural. I'll be on a few weeks later when the price comes down a little bit. So what's your favorite dish in the main dining room?
Spaghetti bolognese.
I wouldn't have expected that.
I know it doesn't, like, nobody gets excited for spaghetti and tomato sauce, but like spaghetti bolognese is like their spaghetti bolognese. There's something about it, the flavor. I don't know what. I don't know what it is, but it's really good. And that is the French onion soup, of course. Before anybody yells,
classic.
That's a classic. I love that as well. But for like when you say favorite dish, I'm thinking like entree.
Yeah.
And spaghetti bolognese is my go-to.
How about what is your favorite specialty restaurants?
I
now
mean,
that we talked about chops and threw it under.
Izumi's always at the top, right? So I'd say either Izumi. I like also 150 Central Park is really nice.
Oh yeah.
That is my. It's not a steak restaurant per se, but their beef tenderloin is fantastic. So we're actually going there tonight for dinner. So putting my money where my mouth is on that.
It's fantastic. Well, that's all that I have, Matt. Any final thoughts or anything you want to share?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to come on here and chat. And I appreciate it. Obviously, I watch your stuff all the time because I really like what you do, and I like your perspective on it. And you cruise differently than I do. It's a surreal experience being here because you and I get to cruise a lot.
Yeah.
And we take it for granted because it's like, I got to go on another cruise next week, right? And it's like, we talk about it in the context of work. And the fact that we've gotten to know each other over the years now has been really awesome. So I'm grateful that you invited me on.
I would agree with that. I am certainly very fortunate, number one, to get to cruise as often as I do, but then to be able to meet wonderful people like you who share a passion not only for cruising, but for sharing our experiences with all of you is really impactful for me. All right, everybody, this is Brandon, the Weekend Cruiser. Hoping to see you on a Weekend Cruise soon.